Greetings. Today I will talk about the tumultuous week of March the 1st through the 7th, 1776. It was during this week that the British occupation of Boston and the tension caused by thousands of colonial rebels that surrounded the city, effectively bottling up General William Howe's British troops, came to a head. This is an excerpt from my book, 1776. I'm still writing this book, which I hope to release in April or May of this year. It will be part of the Timeline of United States History series. Meanwhile, you can enjoy the book 1775, which is available on the website www.mossyfeetbooks.com. Just click on the Timeline of United States History on the lower left-hand side of the homepage. A box set that includes all 6 volumes of the series is available at that link at an economical price. At the beginning of 1776, the situation at Boston in the early stages of the American Revolution was an uneasy draw. British troops controlled the city and the harbor. American troops surrounded the city. The high hills of Dorchester Heights commanded the city, but neither side wanted to occupy them. The British commander, General William Howe, remembered the results of the earlier battle, the Battle of Bunker Hill. Though the British had won that battle, the results were horrendous. British losses had been high as they suffered 226 killed, 828 wounded. These were mostly officers. Howe decided that a victory like that would ruin him. General George Washington wanted to take the hill, but his army was under-equipped, having little artillery. Only about 2,000 of his 9,000-man army had no muskets. The Continental Army was not ready for such a maneuver. American victories on Lake Champlain in New York changed the equation. With the fall of 2 key British forts, the Americans captured a large quantity of cannon, shot, and powder. Hearing of the victories, Washington sent Colonel Henry Knox north to get the supplies. This the colonel accomplished. The feat is still considered one of the greatest logistical accomplishments of warfare. In 3 months, he moved 800 tons of cannonballs, and other paraphernalia over mud roads, semi-frozen rivers, and through forests and swamps to get them to Boston. This accomplished during the dead of winter, using only wagons, horses, sledges, boats, and human muscle. He arrived at late January, giving Washington just the thing he needed to capture Boston from the British. On March the 2nd, Washington positioned some of these guns on the west side of Boston's Lechmere's Point and Cobble Hill and began shelling the city. He continued the shelling on March the 3rd. The British returned fire, however, neither side did much damage. This action on Washington's part served as a diversion for what he was really doing. During the cannonade, when the British returned fire, he used the men that had no guns to begin construction of fortifications during the night of March 3rd and 4th. General Rufus Putnam had devised prefabricated fortifications that they could build out of sight of the British during the days before the occupation and haul into position quickly. At night, Washington's troops continued to use cannonade while the other men labored at getting the cannon into position. The troops lay hay on the ground to muffle the sounds of their feet and wagon wheels. Towards morning on the 3rd, the Americans managed to conceal what they had accomplished and began after nightfall and continued after nightfall on the 4th. They hauled the cannon into plate, built the fortifications, and placed wooden stone-filled barrels around the fortifications they could roll down the hill to impede British troop movements up the hills. By around 4 o'clock a.m., March the 5th, Washington had placed about 2,000 troops, 59 cannon, and an impressive system of fortifications on the heights. Anticipating that Howe might launch an attack on Dorchester Heights, Washington also had troops construct enough troop transports to carry an additional 3,000 troops to launch a counterattack on Boston from his headquarters in Cambridge. When General Howe woke in the morning of March 5th, he saw that Dorchester Heights bristled with Patriot guns and fortifications. After consulting with the British fleet commander, who told him that the guns threatened his fleet, Howe decided to take the Patriot positions and laid plans accordingly. He planned an assault with nearly 2,400 men. Washington learned of these plans and increased the number of troops on the height to over 6,000 troops. A fierce snowstorm began as Howe's troops began the assault. That ended Howe's plans. During the snowstorm, Howe held a council of war with his officers who recommended they evacuate the city. Howe began immediate plans to move his troops from the city. There were other events during this week. These were 6 ships of the Continental Navy arrived at Great Abaco Island in the Bahamas on March the 1st, 1776. American Commodore Esek Hopkins began a bombardment of Fort Nassau in the Bahamas on March the 2nd. Colonel William Moultrie arrived at Sullivan in South Carolina with 400 soldiers and began construction of the fort that Moultrie would command. The Continental Congress appointed Connecticut's Silas Deane as envoy to France to negotiate a treaty of alliance on March the 2nd. On March the 3rd, Hopkins' force marched on Fort Nassau. The governor of the fort, perceiving that he was outnumbered and outgunned, surrendered the fort without a fight. A number of American boats loaded with rice had anchored just offshore from Hutchinson Island in South Carolina, which is a short distance north of Savannah, on the Savannah River. At its widest point, Hutchinson Island is about a mile wide and about 7 miles long. Late in the day on March the 2nd, a British force landed on the island. The soldiers, under cover of darkness, made their way across the island and captured 7 of the rice boats. The stealthy approach and capture of the rice boats anchored just off Hutchinson Island kept their possession by the British troops a secret until mid-morning on March the 3rd. When the commander of the militia learned of their capture, he assembled a party of 3 4-pound cannon on Yamakaw Bluff, which towered over the spot where the rice boats were anchored. The Battle of Rice Boats ensued. Fearing the British would invade New York, aided by the Sandy Hook Lighthouse, the New York Provincial Congress ordered Major William Malcolm to attack the lighthouse and render it useless on March the 6th. I would encourage you to visit and subscribe to the Mossy Books YouTube channel for more great content. If you like my videos, please hit the like button. The more likes I get, YouTube will show it to other people, allowing me to grow the channel. I also entreat you to visit my website, www.mossyfeetbooks.com. There you'll find sample chapters, podcasts, a slew of content, and links to where you can buy my books. While visiting the website, you can subscribe to it and receive email notifications when I publish a new book or other content like this video and podcast. If you like what I'm doing, please purchase a book as it helps fund my work. You can find my books locally at the Rum River Marketplace in downtown Batesville, Indiana. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for listening.